Alright, it's Sad News Day. Science, January 19th, 2024. Here we go. Now, first of all, we're going to talk about uprooted Ukrainian academics rebooting in exile. Now, if you remember from February 2022, you might remember the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Unfortunately, one of those places that were targeted and is now currently under Russian place is a university in Ukraine. And they're all like, alright, okay, what are we gonna do? Oh wait, we've been exiled. Alright, you know what? I have an idea. Here's a new university. What? Oh, university was called Mariupol State University. Well, we have an idea. And so the president, when he went to visit the university, MSU, he didn't have to go ahead and go through like a bunch of enemy lines. Instead, he had just went to their exiled home. Nice. That happens. And these uprooted Ukrainian academics are still rebooting in exile. And many of the institutions and scientists actually displaced from occupied territories may never actually return. Now, of course, MSU's own survival test began on February 24th of 2022 when Russian troops marched on Mariupol, which is on the port of Sea of Azov. Now, that day, MSU rector Mykola Trofmenko and colleagues filled a minibus with laptops and servers and dispatched to the city of Dnipro, 300 kilometers to the north in central Ukraine, meaning that their data would be safe, if none of those servers got damaged, that is. And 200 kilometers to the west in Melitopol, the Russian military began shelling near the Dmitro-Motorny Tavria State Agro-Technological University, which is a TSATU, and it was killing a student. And so all of them removed themselves and they went to a new place in Ukraine. What a very big, good exile too, but without students, there will be no future for the country that they are fighting for, meaning they will have no education and they'll have no way of knowing what has happened to them. Alright, next up, we have to talk about the EPA. Now, the EPA scraps plans to end all testing in animals by 2035. The U.S. Environmental Agency's hard deadline has actually split the scientific community. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, has actually abandoned a controversial plan to phase out all use of mammals to test the safety of chemicals by 2035. Now, the hard deadline, which was imposed in 2019 to accelerate a move towards non-animal models such as computer programs and organs on a chip, make EPA unique among U.S. federal agencies. But to define the scientists, some of whom said animals remain the gold standard for assessing the safety of chemicals that could harm humans and wildlife. And removing the deadline is a good move, says this person named Jennifer Sauce, a senior scientist at the Natural Resources Defense Council who blasted the 2035 target. Now, it's not like comforting with the EPA calling chemical safe based just on cells in a petri dish, because it's a living organism, and cells may be living organisms, but they're just a cell. They're not multi-organisms, and they're not as complex as the real things that could kill us and that could harm us. Yikes. And also, EPA actually relies on studies of hundreds and thousands of animals each year for assessing the safety of chemicals, of pesticides, determining the dangerous levels of chemicals in drinking water, and other key toxicity studies. Now, much of this work is done in mammals such as rodents and rabbits. And so some is also done in fish. And a 2016 amendment to the Federal Toxic Substances Control Act required the agency to move away from animal experiments. Also, set no deadline at all. In September 2019, Wheeler pledged that the EPA would stop conducting or funding any studies on mammals by 2035. He also said that this interim goal on 2025 for reducing these studies by 30%. Other federal agencies have mammal testing. A 2020 U.S. spending bill even compels some to actually do all that. So none has set a hard deadline for ending animal research, except this agency, which is pretty bad because it's not like all of this is going to go away in 15 years. Currently 12 years, but hey, at least they scrapped it now. Yippee-ki-yay! Alright, next up we have a mammoth story written in the tusk. Now, the travels of this mammoth named Elma actually show how she faced twin pressures, climate change, and human hunting. Now first, the 13,000-year-old woolly mammoth, whose tusks were found in 2009 near Fairbanks, Alaska, needed a name. And so, they want a name from the indigenous community, so he calls Evelyn Combs, an archaeologist and Mendes Chong tribal member. And the Healy Lake Village Council settled on Ermayo Ase, an affectionate nickname for things that look funny, which is in the tribe's Dene language. And Combs explains, then Elma, for short, because she needed a life story, which a detailed analysis of the tusk has not provided. Now, now, her travels are giving Combs and colleagues a rare glimpse at the ways of her species at the end of the last ice age, and insight into how pressure from a changing climate, as well as hunting by early humans, have actually made these guys go extinct and may have helped spur mammoth extinction. Now, it's actually a lovely piece of work, says paleoenvironmental researcher Rachel Schwartz-Norman of Sheffield Highland University. Yes, I'm reading all this. Yes, because I'm having a hard time understanding all this. I'm a 12-year-old brain. People, I'm 12 years old. Now, the thing is, so they just went ahead and they studied these tusks. And apparently, I'm going to dumb it down because I'm a 12-year-old kid. They looked at the tusks. And apparently, just like tree rings, there were rings on there. And they've been able to study how the effects of climate change, at least at the end of the last ice age, and human hunting actually started happening all this. The site, this is pretty darn good too. And also pretty darn confusing to my 12-year-old brain. I'm just starting adolescence, people. I'm just starting adolescence. And finally, we're going to talk about surpassing scientific leaks. Alright, surpassing sensitivity limits in liquid biopsy. Now, alternating a cell-free DNA, also known as cfDNA clearance in vivo, is an alternative strategy to max recovery. Note that all this information I'm probably giving you is most likely false by the time you're watching this in like a year or two. Either that, or I'm explaining all this wrong. Don't blame me, I'm a 12-year-old kid. Now, cell-free DNA, cfDNA, can be found in the blood and contains tumor-derived fragments. Apparently, DNA can fall out of the cell. And in recent years, ctDNA approaches have actually continuously been expanded to earlier disease stages. However, a persistent challenge of cancer screening and molecular detection of minimal residual disease, MRD, has been in need for this increase of sensitivity, allowing for the detection of minute amounts of ctDNA with unprecedented accuracy. And most attempts to enhance this sensitivity have actually focused on ex vivo strategies, such as sampling analytical parts. Well, and then it turns out there are also other things that we could do with all this. If we increase liquid biopsy sensitive in vivo, we can actually do things like delayed cfDNA clearance, like modeling clearance, or we can just focus ultrasound on the tumor, or we can just go ahead and do radiotherapy on the tumor itself with ionizing radiation. Okay, that's all I'm going to say because my mind is exploding right now. Alright, that's about it. So, hopefully, if I actually do understand some of this in the future, and I'll probably reread all this, but right now, I think I'll stick with like grade 8 graphs. Hope to see you guys soon. Until next time, Shanana, peace. Wear a seatbelt and wear a helmet.